I never thought my own daughter would become my greatest critic. There was a time when she was my entire world. I remember her tiny fingers gripping mine as we crossed the street, her messy handwriting and homemade birthday cards that said, "Mommy, you're my hero." I still keep those cards. They're in a little wooden box under my bed, along with the sonogram photo and a lock of her baby hair. Memories I used to touch on days I needed to feel loved, on days when the silence in this house felt like it was crushing my chest. I raised her alone. Her father left before she turned 2. I worked double shifts at the bookstore and cleaned houses on weekends. I never complained, not once, because I believed love meant sacrifice, that if I gave her everything I had, even when I had nothing left for myself, she would grow up knowing she was enough, that she was loved. She wanted piano lessons. I found a secondhand keyboard. She needed braces. I skipped checkups for 3 years to save up. When she cried over her first heartbreak, I made pancakes at 3 a.m. and we watched cartoons until dawn. She used to call me the funniest person in the world. But somewhere between 12 and 21, something changed. She started rolling her eyes more, sighing, calling me extra. She didn't want me dropping her off at school. Then she started spending hours on her phone, laughing into a screen, talking to strangers who cheered for her outfits and hair tutorials. I didn't understand her world, but I tried. I even followed her on Instagram. She never followed back. She blew up online after college, became a lifestyle influencer. Suddenly, she was living in downtown apartments, wearing brands I couldn't pronounce, posting pictures of acai bowls and expensive coffee cups. We barely spoke unless I called first, and when I asked how she was, she always said, "Busy, Mom, you wouldn't get it." Then came the video. It was a Saturday morning. I had just finished watering the plants when my neighbor's teenage son sent me a message. "Hey, Mrs. Riley, I think you're in this TikTok." Curious, I clicked the link. It was her, my daughter, smiling at the camera with that signature influencer confidence. "You guys," she laughed, "you want to know what a vintage mom looks like? Mine still uses a flip phone. She thinks TikTok is a dance move. She reuses tea bags and irons socks. Socks!" She was giggling uncontrollably. Then came the punchline. "No wonder Dad left. I'd leave too." My heart didn't just drop, it shattered. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I watched the video again, thinking maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she was joking. Maybe it wasn't really me she was talking about. But I knew that laugh. I knew the wallpaper behind her. It was my kitchen. The comments were worse. "LOL, your mom sounds like a medieval nun. She's why I'll never have kids. Where can I get my own boomer mom for content?" Thousands of people laughing at me. Strangers, teenagers, grown men, people who didn't know my name, my story, my sacrifices, but they all laughed because my daughter gave them permission to. I sat there, in the kitchen she mocked, next to the very teapot she made fun of, staring at the floor like it would swallow me whole. I didn't cry. Not yet. That came later, when I saw she pinned the video to the top of her profile. Proud of it. Proud of turning me into a joke. I wasn't angry. Not at first. Just hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything inside me and replaced it with something cold. It wasn't just that she had humiliated me publicly. It was that she saw me as less, as useless, as content. And the worst part? For a long time, I believed her. That maybe I really was boring, outdated, irrelevant, that my life was just a long stretch of invisible motherhood, meant to be forgotten the moment she became somebody. But in that silence, something stirred, something deep. Not rage, not revenge, not yet. Just a whisper. And that whisper said, You raised her story. Now it's time to tell yours. A few days after the video went viral, I received an invitation. It was a text from her. "Hey mom, brunch this Sunday? My treat." For a moment, I thought maybe she had realized how much she hurt me. Maybe this was her apology. Maybe, just maybe, my daughter was still in there, somewhere, beneath the filters and followers. So I said yes. I dressed carefully that morning, picked a soft blue blouse she used to say brought out my eyes. I even wore lipstick, something I hadn't done in years. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened my necklace. I didn't know what to expect, but I told myself to hope. Hope is a cruel kind of kindness. We met at a downtown cafe. It was loud, trendy, filled with the kind of people who lived through their screens. She was already seated, sipping a matcha latte, phone propped up with a ring light on the table. She didn't look up when I arrived, just said, "You're late," and continued scrolling. No hug, no smile, no sorry. We ordered. She talked about brand deals, follower counts, a possible podcast. I nodded politely, trying to keep up. I waited for the moment she'd say it. The apology, the recognition. But instead, she leaned in and said, "By the way, that video I posted, it hit 2.3 million. Crazy, right?" I froze. She giggled. "People loved it. And relax, it's just jokes. Don't be so sensitive. You're going viral, Mom. Isn't that cool?" Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not with a scream, not even with a tear. It was silent, a clean break, like glass cracking from the inside. I stared at her across that cafe table, her face lit up by a screen. Her lips moving about views and collabs and engagement stats, and I realized she wasn't even speaking to me. She was monetizing my pain, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt done. Something ancient and tired curled up and died inside me. But in its place, something else stirred. Calm, focused, unshakable. I didn't argue, I didn't lecture, I didn't explain my side of the story. I smiled. And when she excused herself to take a quick story time video in the restroom, I sat alone at the table and whispered to my coffee cup, "You want a story, darling? I'll give you one. But it won't be the one you think." Then I left, without saying goodbye. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. For the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home. She didn't notice. She posted videos, laughed on live streams, uploaded hauls and tutorials, and unfiltered rants about the pressures of being a content creator. I watched them all, quietly, without judgment, without comment. But I was listening. I was observing. And while she built her empire out of applause, I began building something else entirely, silently, brick by brick. I created a TikTok account. Anonymous, no face, no name, just a profile with a simple bio. A mother who remembers. The first video was rough. I didn't even know how to add music, but I just told a story, one of the thousands I carried in my chest, about the time my daughter was 5 and tried to run away with nothing but a juice box and a teddy bear. I made it funny, warm, real. No edits, just my voice, steady and soft. By midnight, it had 12,000 views. The second video was about her first day at school, the way she cried when I let go of her hand at the gate, and how I cried harder in the car afterward. People commented things like, "I wish my mom told stories like this." I didn't know I needed to hear this today. Please post more. This feels like a hug. So I did. Every night. Quietly. From my room. She had no idea. I still cooked her meals, folded her laundry, I asked about her day. I nodded while she vented about algorithms and lighting setups. I was invisible. Just the way she liked it. But behind that invisibility, I was growing. Like a seed in the dark. I read articles about content hooks, engagement timing, storytelling arcs. I studied her videos not to copy, but to understand. Not to be her, but to become something more. Stories about motherhood, about mistakes, about laughter and loss, and quiet victories no one applauded but mattered anyway. People resonated, they followed, they shared. Within 5 days, I had 100,000 followers. By the 7th day, I had more than her. That night, as she paced in the living room, ranting about how some random mom account is stealing her audience, I just stirred my tea and said, maybe they're just ready for something real. She didn't even look up. She didn't know. Not yet, but soon. Because the stage she built from mockery, I was about to walk onto it. And this time, the applause wouldn't be for her. The moment came sooner than I expected. She burst into the kitchen one afternoon, phone in hand, her eyes wide with disbelief and panic. "You're the mom account?" she gasped. Not even a hello, just that. I looked up from my knitting. The one with the story time videos? The teacup? The bookshelf in the background? That's our house. That's you. I smiled softly. Yes, sweetheart, that's me. She stared like I had slapped her. Why would you do that? You're embarrassing me. People are tagging me, saying I'm ungrateful. You're ruining my brand. I set down my yarn, folded my hands gently in my lap. I'm just telling stories, true ones you lived too. People happen to like them. Her voice rose. You're trying to take over my platform. I shook my head, calm. No, I'm just using my voice, finally. That week, I received an invitation from a major podcast. We'd love to feature the anonymous mom whose storytelling is melting hearts across the internet. They wanted a face reveal, a full episode, live. I said yes, and I made sure she knew. When I stepped into the studio, I wore the very blouse she used to mock. Light floral, with a small stain I couldn't wash out. But it didn't matter. It was me. It was honest. The host introduced me as the mother behind the viral account. I smiled at the camera, heart steady. This wasn't a performance. This was release. They asked me, "Why did you start this account?" I answered, "Because I was tired of being erased, and I realized if no one tells your story for you, you have to tell it yourself." They asked about the viral video, her video. I didn't attack. I didn't name names. I just said, sometimes the people closest to us forget that love doesn't mean silence. It means showing up even when you're mocked, especially then. The episode aired that night. It exploded. Clips flooded every corner of social media. This woman is the internet's new mom. I called my mom after this. She's everything. The next morning, she knocked on my door. Her makeup was smudged, hair messy, like she hadn't slept. She walked in without waiting. "They all hate me now," she said, voice cracking. "I lost over 40,000 followers in a day. Sponsors are pulling out. People are calling me a bully." I nodded slowly. That must be hard. She sat down, silent. For the first time, really silent. Then she whispered, "Did you mean to ruin me?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, I meant to remember myself. She looked away. Her hands trembled. So what now? She asked. I sipped my tea. Now? I said gently. Now you get to decide who you want to be when no one is watching. There was no rage in me, no gloating, just peace, because I hadn't shouted her down. I hadn't canceled her. I had simply spoken the truth, steadily, softly, and with love that refused to disappear even when it was mocked. And now, the world had listened. She stood to leave, shoulders slumped. You really passed me in followers? She asked, barely audible. I smiled. Sweetheart, I passed needing them. The storm passed, not all at once, but day by day the noise quieted. The hashtags faded. The spotlight moved on, as it always does. And in the silence left behind, the truth remained. She lost nearly half her audience. Brands withdrew, collaborations dried up. The comments shifted from adoration to disappointment. I used to love her, but this? Unforgivable. How do you humiliate your own mother for views? She needs a serious reality check. She posted an apology video, of course she did. Tears, soft lighting, trembling voice. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, especially not my mom. I just thought it was funny. But the internet isn't kind to half-hearted redemption, especially when the one you hurt chooses grace instead of fire. Meanwhile, my world opened. I was invited to share more stories on talk shows, podcasts, even a guest column in a parenting magazine. What started as anonymous videos turned into a book deal, the stories she forgot to tell. It wasn't revenge I was writing. It was memory, legacy, truth wrapped in warmth. People stopped me in grocery stores. Are you the TikTok mom? Your voice helped me reconnect with my daughter. I called my mother after your video. But the real reward wasn't fame. It was freedom. For the first time in decades, I felt seen, not just as someone's mother, someone's background character, but as a whole person, with dreams, laughter, regrets, and quiet wisdom that had lived in me all along. I started traveling. Small towns, big cities, anywhere that called. I sat in parks with journals, visited bookshops without guilt, shared meals with strangers who became friends. My world grew bigger, not smaller. And her? She stayed quiet for a while. We didn't speak much, but there were signs. A voicemail on my birthday, a comment under one of my videos, just a heart emoji. Then one day, she knocked on my door, holding a homemade pie she had never learned to bake. We sat, talked, not as influencer and content, but as mother and daughter. She said, I didn't know you were so full of life. And I said, that's because you stopped looking. She cried. I didn't. Not out of coldness, but because my tears had already fallen long ago, and what remained now was something sturdier. Forgiveness, not for her sake, but for mine. Because carrying pain is like holding a flame in your bare hands. Sooner or later, it only burns you. I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And if there's one thing I've learned through this strange, beautiful twist of fate, it's this. You are never too old to become unforgettable. Never too quiet to shake the world. Never too ordinary to matter. We think revenge is fire, but sometimes it's a gentle voice saying, you don't get to define me. I do. And I did. Now, when I pour tea into the cup she once mocked, I smile. Not in bitterness, but in joy. Because the tea is warm. The room is quiet. And the woman I see in the reflection of that cup, she's finally whole. Let them laugh, I whisper, just loud enough for the universe to hear. You You just live so well that silence becomes your loudest answer.